Mexico may not pay for the wall that Trump promised and isn't really delivering on, but uh, yeah, apparently Trump has managed to convince, let's say, Netanyahu to pay for at least removing all the rubble from Gaza in the war that the Palestinian people started against Israel. That is first of all, that is on its own very bad, but it's also a sign of, I'm afraid, bad things to come. First of all, the rubble should be removed, but the people should be removed first, okay? And if they're not removed first, they should be the ones removing the rubble, okay? They did this, clean up your own goddamn mess. Um, that's a nice thought. It's not going to happen. Welcome to the reality show, the daily panel show of the International Association of Owen Jones Scholars. I'm senior scholar Razi Ginsburg, joined by senior scholars Daniel, Marco, and Richard. Richard, as a senior scholar in the International Association of Owen Jones Scholars, what do you think of this?
It's so offensive. You did not warn me you were going to besmirch my name in
You
such a
should have watched yesterday's show. We rechristened ourselves.
Yes, yeah. Well, I certainly like the picture that went with yesterday's show as an apt description of it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this is the story about who should clear the rubble, and frankly, as you say, it should be the Palestinians themselves. And frankly, that rubble ought to include Hamas as well, because Hamas is still inoperative. It's still having trials in the streets of people who disagree with it. It is still armed. And of course, we're talking about rubble here. We're talking about the buildings. And frankly, that is too early to be talking about that, even before you decide who should clear it, which is certainly not Israel. But of course, Israel's got previous for agreeing to the US demands for it to supply things like aid to the very same territory. And of course, it shouldn't be doing that either. It shouldn't have been doing that at the time. I mean, there are other things that the US is doing, which is good. I mean, today, for example, they sanctioned a couple of ICC judges from Georgia and Mongolia because of their stance on Israel. So there's some give and take, but you can't be inconsistent in such a manner. You've got to be consistent, and that includes not clearing up the rubble caused by those that started the war in the first place.
Yeah, I think the issue here is to define the rubble. If you're just talking about the bits of building, or you're talking about the population as well. But I'm a bit in two mind on this one, to be honest, because okay, Israel allegedly has to pay for it. Yeah, people seem not to have agreed with Smotrich, who hasn't cleared the funds. The finance minister hasn't cleared this yet. But the point is that if Israel is in control of the clearance, Israel will be able to make sure that Hamas doesn't interfere with it, because Hamas, let's not forget, is still in charge of Gaza, just like October the 8th hadn't happened. Like all the people who died, all the Israeli soldiers who died in Gaza in retaliation, in response to the atrocity of October the 7th, have effectively died in vain, because Hamas is still there, is still controlling Gaza, and it might well um, uh, it will interfere in the operations led by the international community. And of course, that we're talking lots of billions kicking around. I think they're talking about 70 billions, something like that. I mean, imagine how many snouts in the trough there's going to be, and lots of it will go to Hamas, which will, stash some money aside to create another invasion, a few years down the line, if not earlier. But the fact that Israel will be in charge of this operation is probably a good thing, because they will have operational control and they will have financial control over it. So in a way, it's probably a good thing for them to do. It's going to be expensive. I think they're talking about a couple of billions, but Israel can probably shoulder that one. And frankly, if it allows you to get rid of Hamas infrastructure while you're clearing the rubble, yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Daniel.
Yeah, I think I would have to disagree. I mean, when it comes to reconstruction, that happens always. Whatever happens, there is reconstruction, right? Unless that region like completely falls into chaos. And the idea is, how is that reconstruction going to look like, and who is going to pay for it? We did, and I mean collectively, the West, or more specifically America, did the reconstruction of West Germany after World War II. This was after Nazism was completely defeated. There was a recognition that this will never happen again, and the Germans have accepted that basically, okay, we are now becoming part of the West. And afterwards, there was set up a fund to basically help the reconstruction of West Germany. By the way, that fund for reconstruction of Germany is still existing the way like Germany used it. They still haven't returned it technically, which is interesting. But yeah, that was how it was done. Ideology was defeated. Now these are our allies. Because they are our allies, will help them rebuild. When it comes to Gaza, Palestinianism hasn't been defeated. When it comes to Gaza, the uh, Israel is not annexing any of it. I mean, at least it's still controlling about half of Gaza, but the I we don't know where the deal is going. My prediction still is that Israel will just continue occupying the half of Gaza until who knows when. But the fact is that it isn't annexing all of it. It doesn't have plans to annex it. And even if it keeps control, I have a suspicion that it will not annex the parts that it is controlling. So you're not getting it. So therefore, paying for it is ridiculous if you are not going to keep it, if you are not going to annex it. And Palestinianism hasn't been defeated. When it comes to funding them, when it comes to funding the reconstruction, you are just funding your future destruction. This is in no way acceptable result. Again, I think there are two solutions here. Well, I think for this one, it's too late. One is defeating Palestinianism. At this point, I don't know how you do it because of how much bad rhetoric was there, because of where Palestinians are, because of the whole way this war has been fought. So unfortunately, I don't think there is possibility right now. But the second one is kicking them out, annexing all of it, and yeah, then you're not even funding, and then you don't even have to fund it to some extent because you can just say, hey, if Israelis wanna move in there and you can rebuild it yourself.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, just read a man from Stanmore charged with support for October 7th at a rally, a Kuwait citizen. Why is he in this country? Deport him. Well, first of all, if he's only a Kuwaiti citizen, sure. If he's also a British citizen, then no, you can't deport him. And
And wouldn't he get deported anyway? I don't know how Britain does it, but if
if
like
you're a
somebody,
citizen of this country, you can't be deported.
no,
And
no,
if
no, I mean if he's not citizen, if he's
I
just an
don't know.
immigrant.
I don't know, but Richard or Marco might know.
Well, almost certainly not, or at least
I
some
mean,
policy.
unless he's an asylum seeker, because I know there's like a difference when it's like, and
Not
all of the
from
Who
immigrants
from
are
Kuwait
asylum
would be an
seekers.
not from
asylum seeker?
Kuwait.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and not for at least
Um,
a decade.
but the thing is, also with people who are full-on criminals, you can deport them, and then they'll live happily ever after elsewhere, or you can have a prison system that is, let's say, a little bit less rewarding than we have in the UK, and where if you commit a crime, you actually have to pay for it, and you live in prison not at the expense of the taxpayers, but you actually have to work. But if we're not making the people of Gaza pay for the war they started, we're not going to make the people of Kuwait who come into this country to support the massacre of Jews pay for their own upkeep, unfortunately. Um, WUB says, what about those fat billionaire Hamas? Where did they get the money from? Uh, they get the money from us. That's where they get the money from. And yeah, it's nobody is suggesting that their billions would pay for the damage they caused. Not the Hamas leaders who can probably afford it out of their own bank account and still be pretty well off. Not the people of Gaza who, have spent 20 years building the infrastructure for October 7th and then carrying it out. And then the past 2 years, they spent continuing that war that they started. No, it is going to be, unfortunately, Israel that is going to be forced to pay for it as of now. And again, there's no, um, actually, there's a comment here that is along those lines. Somebody says, I thought Trump was going to turn Gaza into a golfing resort. So first of all, taco applies not just to tariffs. Trump always chickens out when he announces something because he announces stuff just to see what kind of reaction he's going to get. Unfortunately, that thing he announced was the right thing. He said they will have to leave. I don't know if I would do it with like an AI video of him chilling with Bibi, but I'll definitely take that over what's now in Gaza. Um, and yeah, he threw it out there. People criticized him. It didn't really work out. So now he's walking it back. By the way, one of the reason there isn't much uproar about this in Israel is because where will the uproar come from? It's not going to come from the left because they support the Palestinians and think that Israel is evil. It's not going to come from the right because they cannot criticize Netanyahu and they won't criticize Trump. And when it's Trump and Netanyahu agreeing, they'll just go along with it. And that's not a good sign. That's the thing. You can support a leader because you think he's overall good or because you think everybody else is worse. But you have to actually think and come up with, what you actually think is right or wrong on different issues. And if the person you support as leader, you might think he's wrong on an issue and still vote for him. But don't pretend like he's right on that. I mean, and don't imagine that if you criticize somebody you're overall more in favor of than the alternative, that oh no, you're giving in to the left. No, you are making the situation worse by saying that your favorite politician or your preferred leader is pretending that he's never wrong. They are very wrong on this, both of them, and it's not going to end well, Richard.
Sorry, just quickly on the foreign nationals. So it looks like the UK government is taking steps like in the middle of this year. This is from Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood. She said, this government is taking radical action to deport foreign criminals as part of our plan for change. Deportations are up under this government, and with this new law that they will happen earlier than ever before. So it looks like they lowered the sort of when can you deport it? Because apparently you can only deport 1/3 into their sentence, which is weird. And it looks like foreign offenders still make up 12% of total prison population, with prison places costing £54,000 a year on average. So 12%
What
in
per
UK prisons,
person?
it looks like.
Jesus, how is that? It's like living
Well,
in central London per person doesn't cost that much.
well, mind you, most prisons are actually run by Muslim gangs within the prison itself. So that cost in bribes. That's very expensive.
There was a prison announced earlier this week. I can't remember which one it was. Began with an S, I think, where it was there was a whole report done exposing the fact that it was run by Muslim gangs and that six prisoners who were on their first night went into the prison were stabbed because the Muslim gangs had control of it and were ensuring their power even from day one of a prisoner, entering their cell. Six of them. So yeah, it is an absolute mess at the moment, the prison system. And of course, Shabana Mahmood says all sorts of things, but does she do it? No, she doesn't. Absolutely not. And I think don't forget, this is the government that is cancelling jury trials. This is the government that is postponing elections in May
Letting criminals out.
and letting criminals out with having served even less than half of their sentence. So it is hardly a justice, focused government, despite its rhetoric, for sure. I think to go back to the topic we're talking about just for a second, I've heard that Qatar don't want to pay. Well, that's a shocker, isn't it? Apparently, they've compared it to Russia and Ukraine, which is both insulting and a bogus comparison, claiming that Ukraine should be rebuilt by Russia, and Israel should be the ones paying for the rebuilding of Gaza. But of course, ignoring the fact that the Gazans started the war in the first place.
Wait, did he actually say Russia should rebuild Ukraine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he did within that sentence.
Sure.
But of course, when he then meets Putin, no doubt he'll be funding Russia's drone supplies and all the rest of it, no doubt. But yeah, this is, and they've already talked about doing a pilot scheme in Rafah, I think, which is already supposed to cost tens or hundreds of millions of dollars just to clear the area around Rafah. But a lot of these numbers are frankly pulled out of someone's arse. They're as unreliable as Hamas ministry figures, frankly. So it's hard to assess exactly what anything would cost when you don't know what you're talking about. But the cost isn't totally the story either. There's two parts to this hot potato. One is who finances it. Second is who oversees it. And Israel is trying to be stitched up with both of those tasks so that anything that went wrong with how it's overseen, or of course any ordnance that they come across or any casualties which occur during rubble clearing, all of that will be Israel's fault, as well as having to stomach the financial cost of it. So this is a poison chalice, to say the least, but it's got poison chalice written on the outside of the cup, so it's quite easy to spot.
We should be clear about, we're talking about the clearance of the areas, not the reconstruction. The reconstruction, I totally agree, shouldn't be, no one should reconstruct Gaza, because you still have the Gazans there, the people who caused 9/11. So they should be responsible for reconstructing and effectively repairing what they caused in the first place. And it's totally different from Nazi Germany. As you mentioned, Daniel, Germany was defeated. Palestinianism is gone beyond just the borders of Gaza, because we saw them the other day in Australia. We saw them in New York City when an attempt to bomb certain events was foiled. Other attempt in Germany. Every day there is some sort of stopping of some Palestinian plan or Palestinian-like supporting plan to disrupt life in the West. So that's it's too late really to stop it just acting in Gaza, and also. The clearance itself would guarantee that Israel has some presence in Gaza. We should make sure that Gaza doesn't go back to the hands of the international community, which means the usual Hamas supporters and Hamas itself. So that should be made clear that every operation. I mean, don't forget that the tunnels themselves, the hundreds of miles of tunnels under Gaza, are still there. Most of them are not exploded yet. So who's going to do that? Do you think Hamas is going to give up the weapons and say, okay, we had our go, now we're going to retire? No way. They're going to double the effort and create more October the 7th, like they promised already. So unless Israel is there, making sure they do not allow any fudging or any way for Hamas to entrench itself again, really, we're not going to go anywhere. After 2 years of war, we're going to be exactly in the same position within 5 years' time. And frankly, I don't care what they do with Gaza itself. As far as I'm concerned, they can leave it as a car park. The Palestinians cause all this. The Palestinian supporters enable all this. So they should be paying for it. But we've seen how the Israeli government is not determined to win this war, is not determined to protect the Jews in the area. So, not much you can do about it.
A car park would be an upgrade. I would not park my car in Gaza as it is now. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Okay, yeah, Daniel.
Well, first, Deborah says in the chat, the Nazis were forced out of Czechoslovakia in East Prussia. No, Germans were. It wasn't just, if you're a member of the Nazi party or anything. No, all Germans, because again, they were responsible for the war as well. The Germans in Czechoslovakia specifically founded a party that was NSDAP aligned, that did join the main party after the Sudet parts were annexed. As well as Germans in Slovakia. The Hungarians in Slovakia joined the the fascist government in Hungary. So yeah, it's very similar situation. You have Palestinians. Well, it's even worse because when we are talking about Palestinians, we are talking about like the Nazis or the German population in actual Germany, not Palestinians in Israel or Arabs in Israel. So yeah, absolutely. I would support deportation. I mean, again, this is what happens with every war. That the people who started the war either get kicked out of the place they try to take over, or at the very least they get kicked out of the place they try to take over, but might even get kicked out like I said, like the Germans in she said East Prussia and Sudeten in the Sudets in Czechoslovakia. Those were people who were living there for hundreds of years, and they were kicked out because they decided to take over a country. This is what happens. And sort of going back into the reconstruction, I mean, somebody in the chat again said, Israelis want natural resources, which again, what natural? Like, Gaza is not a good land. Like, I don't think Israel benefits from annexing Gaza. It only benefits from like the national security perspective that you have to take it over, you have to do something there, or you'll get invaded again. Gaza, like we said, all the rubble will have to get cleared up. You need to rebuild it. You'll actually like it's gonna take years, if not decades, to actually make it into something productive. It's not an attractive piece of land. If we could simply wipe it off the map and get the people from there somewhere else, I think it would be much more beneficial to Israel. I think if that place was replaced by water, it would be much more beneficial to Israel than having to deal with the annexation costs.
Yeah,
Clearly, you don't spend enough time on Twitter. The whole thing is water, water that moves interesting patterns, kind of around people.
Yes, sea level have been rising, but only in Gaza apparently.
there is so much gas in Gaza that Israel has just announced a massive deal with Egypt for gas. So, Gaza is a barren land. Apart from the tunnels, there's nothing there that's
Well,
worth it.
apparently on gas, apparently there are like gas deposits there. But again, like you'd need so much infrastructure to actually develop it that
That's just hot air. And by the way, that deal with Egypt is probably going to be a topic of a show. Israel is still in the October 6th mindset, not realizing that you are doing a deal with people who just want to kill
So,
you, and giving them the fuel to do so. Unbelievable. Um, Also unbelievable, just to put what we're talking about today in its context. So um uh, yeah, Marco, you were talking about what Hamas might do, what they might not do. There's a ceasefire agreement with them. They are supposed to disarm according to that deal, and it's I believe sometime in March that they're supposed to disarm, and either completely or whatever. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to happen. And the person making the decisions, Donald Trump, is telling them basically that this is not on them. Like when he looks at who is responsible for making sure this ceasefire continues, it's Israel. It's Israel that he's expecting that from. And when he looks at the future of Gaza, Hamas is still likely going to be there, even from his perspective. It's Israel that won't be there. Tomorrow, there's reports that tomorrow there's a meeting in Miami about the future of Gaza and the ceasefire with Steve Witkoff. He's going to be meeting, according to this report from AFP, he's going to be meeting with representatives from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey. So no Israeli representatives of countries that are hostile to Israel, that actively support and harbor murderers of Jews, and countries that should absolutely not be involved at all in the future of Gaza. Those are the countries. The country that isn't involved is Israel. Richard.
Yeah, and Turkey's pushing at the moment, isn't it, to get troops involved in terms of peacekeeping troops for this international stabilization force, this joke of an international stabilization force. They don't want to do any disarming of Hamas. They've made that clear. They just want to be there to peacekeep, which is basically to ensure that Israel can't do anything, because Israel's not allowed to disarm Hamas because that would be breaching the ceasefire. It is a ridiculous situation, and ridiculous that Turkey should have any involvement whatsoever. But of course, that's been par for the course for too long. Now, and I think this is one of the key things here is the demilitarization of the zone, the disarming of Hamas is the thing that is being always pushed aside at every opportunity when it comes to talk. People would rather talk about rubble clearance than de-arming Hamas because that's the difficult one, and that's the one that they're refusing to do. Frankly, it wouldn't be as difficult as it needs to be. It could be done from the air, frankly, but it's being made difficult by the ceasefire agreement and the nature of the capitulation to compromise that Israel and every signatory has undergone in the course of it. But that's not the only evasion that's going on here. I mean, at the end of the daily objective, you threw forward the fact that we were going to mention Francesca Albanese, and we've all evaded this fact right up until now. So it falls to me to mention the UN special bullshitter for the Palestinian territories, and she's been speaking in London. I tried to find out where exactly, but wasn't very clear. But it might have been SOAS, and that would certainly fit. That wouldn't be a shocker at all. SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, and a hotbed of Palestinianism support, many rallies and such like.
Yeah, even as universities go, SOAS is particularly bad and always has been.
Yeah.
Well, you can still use that word. I thought it's not PC anymore.
Which word is that?
Oh,
Oriental.
Well, they've got it.
They
well,
can, they
yes.
can.
They use it as an acronym, so you can get away with anything as an acronym. But yes, and she said, and this is a quote from her: "If Israel do not want to be accused of colonial practices, it should not behave as a colonial power, as a colonial entity." But the UN wants to treat Israel as a colonial entity and tell it what to do in terms of clearing the rubble and looking after the Palestinians' interest in Gaza. That's clearly what's actually going on here. But she said all sorts of things, including a big long rant about how the sanctions against herself are causing her considerable personal trauma, which is something I applaud. The trauma that is.
Yeah, well, one of the discomfort for Albanese for being sanctioned by the United States is the fact she can't open a bank account over there, presumably. Where is Iran gonna put the funds to fund her, allegedly? We don't know that, but she just probably does the anti-Semitism for free, doesn't she? Um,
She actually does, because she always makes to remind us that she doesn't actually get paid for her position as a special rapporteur.
Yes, whatever. Because she's gone there as SOAS for free, as I bet she's being paid a big fat fee, and the big fat fee is in lieu of her good work at the UN. Don't tell me these people are. Come on, if she had to earn money in order to feed her stupid mouth, she would be much quieter. You wouldn't hear from her that much. But we're talking about disarming Hamas, again, which is still the government of Gaza. Well, this is part of the second phase. That's why nobody's even tackling yet. That's why nobody's even talking about how will you actually go to Hamas and say, okay, guys, disarm, because we know that Hamas are just a bunch of terrorists. They don't care about anybody else. In fact, Israel is the only of the two parties that actually fulfill the terms of the ceasefire. They return all the terrorists that were in the jails, while Hamas is still holding one hostage. They promised to return them all. No, at least one hostage is still held by Hamas itself, or Islamic State, whatever. Doesn't matter which savage is holding it. But again, the focus is on Israel because they have to behave according to the rules. Nobody else does. Hamas is free to take the piss out of the West and do whatever they like, which is exactly what Putin and Xi Jinping have been allowed to do by the West. We see some terrorists, we see some dictator. What do? We just roll the red carpet and off we go, do what you like, or we'll just forgive you in the name of multiculturalism and altruism, because our leaders are that stupid that are quite happy to go along. It's just depressing, really.
Daniel.
Somebody just called him Mississippi Marco, which I have no idea how is that a specific
I
target.
wish the person did that. Did it to my face and see whether you're gonna end up in Alabama with your face.
From Mississippi.
Yeah, Daniel, not everything needs to be repeated, but yeah, continue.
Uh, and he says we should get in touch with our human side, which this is what it is. This is like properly understanding the value of human life, the properly understanding ideology, properly understanding what it takes for human flourishment. And what it takes is not surrendering to evil. It's not surrendering to terrorism. It's not saying to Palestinians, okay, you've killed enough Jews, now you get a state. Because again, this is what always happens. It's Palestinian and not even Palestinians, right? We see that everywhere. It's evil people, evil countries under evil ideologies try to do something evil, because that's what it is. They need to project themselves outward. They need to go invade other countries or go repress other people or go take away from other people, because that's the only way evil can sustain itself. They do that, and then our response is, well, let's give them just a little bit. Let's give them just a little bit until the next time they need to invade somebody, right? Let's give them some flourishment, so the next time they invade, we can give them something again. When Palestinians started the intifadas, we gave them a state. We gave them the Palestinian Authority. When, or the first intifada rather, when they started second intifada, well, let's give them Gaza. After now, well, let's recognize their whole state. When Russia invaded Crimea, well, let's recognize it. Let's not do anything big. When it comes to negotiations, well, let's give them something. Every time, Iran, well, they're developing nuclear weapons. Let's give them their funds back just to alleviate the pressure on them. Every time we try to deal with evil, we do it by trying to appease them, trying to give them something. So hopefully, maybe they'll like us. Maybe they'll look at, oh look, they're actually nice. They gave us stuff. Maybe we should be friends with them. No, this never happens, because unlike us, they recognize the nature of their governments. They recognize they cannot have peace with us. Russia cannot have peace with the West because they wouldn't survive as a regime. Iran cannot have peace with the West because their regime wouldn't survive. Palestinians, as they are right now, cannot have peace with Israel because the nature of their existence would disappear. They only exist right now to destroy the state of Israel, to go and fight against Western ideology in any way it's represented. And the closest way it's represented right now is the state of Israel. This is what they will go for. Unless we recognize the nature of those regimes, we'll never be able to actually solve it. And as I always remind, this is also a problem on the Netanyahu side. The fact that he said we are liberating Palestinians from Hamas. He gave in to the idea that Palestinians do not celebrate October 7, that they do not support October 7, that they do not want to see more of October 7. Again, if the idea was that Palestinians want peace, why are they calling for releasing of terrorists? Why are they calling for releasing of Marwan Barghouti? If you are committed to peace, you wouldn't want those people to suffer in jail. You wouldn't want them to become what the past was, which is violence. But no, they want their violent leaders back.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Somebody in the chat said Gaza won't pay, and earlier in the chat, Yael said Trump wants to make Riviera in Gaza. Here's the thing. Obviously, I would like to see the Palestinians pay for the damage caused in the war that they started, but that's not the most important thing. Okay, that's clearing the rubble is not the most important thing, and it shouldn't start yet because the war isn't actually over because the Palestinians haven't been defeated, they haven't surrendered. So the next steps are, first of all, resuming the war, stepping it up, not fighting it the way it was fought up until now, but fighting it in a way where Israeli soldiers' lives aren't put at risk unnecessarily, and where Palestinian civilians feel the pain more than they have so far. And then the next step is once they surrender, they get to get the fuck out because they cannot stay there. And then you can actually build a Riviera because as a plot of land, it is perfectly fine. I mean, it's great. And, there will be people who would be happy to pay for it if clearing the rubble means they build like really good stuff there that they can then make money off of. So that is a way in which, if Gazans won't pay and maybe they're, short on cash, although they have been even before October 7th, the largest per capita recipients of so-called humanitarian aid in the world. So, but I know they spent that money. So if they can't pay, there will be a way to clear that rubble when the rubble is cleared uh, for something better, a return of Palestinianism in the same exact place. That is not something better. That is a type of reward for the war that they started. Richard.
Yeah. In preparation for this show, Daniel sent a bunch of articles around, and one of them included Smotrich talking about refusing to pay for this. But Daniel pointed out in the course of this was when he spoke 2 weeks ago, or the article was from 2 weeks ago. In the course of that article, Smotrich said there's a limit to every trick, meaning the trick being getting Israel to pay for its enemies. But of course, I don't know what that limit is. Maybe it's a 2 week limit, and maybe the limit is already expired and it's ready to go again. Because there's no certainty that what he says will become Israeli policy or will stop Israeli policy, or whether it will in fact be exactly as we're commenting here, and that it will start with a pilot scheme in Rafah, followed by a wider rollout of clearance in the Gaza Strip. Who knows? We do know that the UNDP, this is the UN Development Programme, is the one saying it's going to cost $70 billion. Of course, this is the part of the UN that supposedly looks after, or tries to tackle poverty and sustainable human development, whatever that means. But of course, this is the part of the UN that isn't focused specifically on Gaza, and yet, of course, it is focused on Gaza, because all of the UN is essentially focused on attacking Israel wherever it can. And even if it's got these dedicated units that specialize in that, some of the wider groups that cover more wider issues to do with poverty, etc., also focus on that. So all money that goes to the UN, in many ways, is fed towards this same cause. But they're the ones coming up with this bogus number of how much it would cost. And a lot of the numbers related to this are completely made up. I mean, Marco and I spent some time trying to work out what on the basis of what was stated was the amount of rubble in Gaza, how much rubble that would be per unit of land, how tall a building would have to be to collapse to that unit, how many trucks it would take to clear that amount of space. All of those numbers are utterly contradictory. Doesn't matter where you start, doesn't matter which number you take as your starting point, they contradict each other all over the place, just proving that none of these numbers are remotely reliable, are they? The whole exercise was completely futile, but of course, it just goes to prove the point that these numbers are invented. And of course, what needs to happen is it needs to be done on a proper factual basis. And of course, that needs to start with making sure that the tunnels are empty, the tunnels are cleared, the tunnels are blown up, and of course that Hamas is demilitarized before you send in the bulldozers or as you send in the bulldozers to clear a certain area of Gaza.
And even the whole topic of clearing Gaza itself, all the stuff that we hear about from the very NGOs, the charities and the UN bodies, it's actually just propaganda again, because they are coming up with numbers that make it look like the whole of Gaza has been devastated. Well, first of all, there's not much to devastate there because it was a shithole before and it's still a shithole. So again, Hamas is in charge of it. So it's still a terrorist state. What else could you do with it? But the problem is that Nobody ever looks at the numbers. For example, how was UNRWA funded exactly? How did Hamas managed to get enough funds to dig all those miles and miles of grounds? Where did they buy the weapons from? How could they possibly afford to buy all this kind of gear, all the stuff that they've been using? How can they afford to keep a hold on the Palestinians, given that Gaza itself doesn't really produce anything? They never actually do those kind of comparison, because if you start looking into it, you realize that there should be billions coming in, either from people like Iran, the terrorist republic or Islamic Iran, or are totally stolen from the international community. And at the point, the international community should actually stop sending money in this hole, which goes directly to terrorism. But this kind of calculation, this kind of research is never really done. It's only done when it looks like you can bash Israel on the head with it. And they come up with this estimate of volume of rubble and idiotic stuff. And it is a waste of time, frankly. Again, making the point that Israel is always the one that has to come up as the evil in the equation. Of course, it's not about Israel anymore. There is no Israel in Australia. We've seen the attack in Sydney was directed to Jews, was directed to the West. These people hate the fact that we are a free society, that we allow independence for human being. We push for democracy, we push for individual rights. And the people who support Palestinianism, the people who support Hamas, the people who support any form of Islamism, really, especially our dear leaders here in Britain, actually stand for exactly the same thing that the Palestinians and the Islamic Republic of Iran or all the other dictatorship in the area stand for, which is total enslavement of people and effectively the rule of an elite over most of humanity. And that's what they're going for. They think they're going to be the leaders in charge of everybody else with the excuse of pushing everybody down. They hate progress. They hate success. They hate everything which they cannot achieve. Effectively, they've seen the dream of world domination through socialism fail, and now they cling on to Islamism because it's the next possible winner here in order to subjugate people. They hate freedom. They hate reason. They choose to use every unreasonable, non-rational way of living the life, and they hate the fact that we, using reason, can make a good life for ourselves, can be successful, can be rich, and they hate all that because they cannot do it. And they resort to every sort of violence and destruction they can put their hands on, and that's why they're supporting Palestinianism so much. That's why Palestinianism is such a fertile ground in the socialist far left environment in the West, really.
Daniel.
Well, it's even worse than that because Marco said that the money was stolen, but the money we gave to Gaza wasn't stolen. It was given. We consented to it. Not consented as in, every citizen did, but the governments of EU, of America are giving money to the UN, are giving money to even UNRWA directly in some cases, or have been. I think some of the payments have thankfully stopped. But trying to say that no, it's the Hamas got money from somewhere else. We just gave it to UNRWA. We just gave it to Gazans. It's like some junkie asking you for money, and you say, "Hey, I'm kind of worried that you'll buy drugs with the money I give you." It's like, no. I'll use your money to buy food. I'll use other money to buy my drugs. It's like, no, that doesn't work like that. It's all the money is the same thing, unless you manage to set up some. Although no, even if you manage to set up some perfect system, well, all the money going into Gaza will just go to the people. That's money Hamas then doesn't have to spend on their own people. So it's the money that they now can spend on terrorism. They wouldn't be able to spend money on terrorism if they had to deal with the crisis at home. Although they would probably still, I mean, we've seen they would rather have the baby formula be hidden in their storages than actually give it to their people. So I probably Hamas would steal from their own people, but that's again something that Palestinians are okay with, are supportive of, and and separately, even this idea that UNRWA still exists here, like 80 years later, this idea that governmental organizations or non-governmental organizations that are funded by governments or by the UN or anybody are these like permanent things that, okay, this is just fact of reality, that part of your money will forever now go to these people in Gaza or go to people anywhere. Like, we've covered the USAID story, and I haven't looked into fully the consequences of it, but I've seen like articles. It's like tens of thousands of people are dying because of the less funding to USAID. And on some level, yeah, I think the USAID could have just given it to private organizations or something, just so there is no disruption. But also, it's like, what do you mean? USAID has been here for like decades, and there are people relying on it so much that, once it's gone, like people start dying. It seems like a systematic issue that should have been solved a long time ago. Like, I don't know if you guys know the Sam Kinison joke about the desert. It's like, you guys live in a desert. Move away. There's no food here because you live in a desert. Move somewhere where the food is. Move somewhere where you don't have to rely on international community to constantly like fund you. I mean, the fact that now it's apparently sometime in 20th century, like a divine rule has been posed that people no longer have to immigrate, and forever wherever you want to live forever, somebody else should pay for it. Somebody else should be forced to give up their taxes so you can live wherever you are, instead of like moving where actual production happens, where you can actually sustain yourself. So yeah, I mean, the fact that it was accepted that Gazans or anybody in that matter, any population in the world is now we have to make sure everybody can survive. No, it's move somewhere where you can actually be productive.
I
Well,
don't know, Daniel. Yeah, Marco.
well, technically, Tel Aviv was the same land, wasn't it? I mean, but Israeli, because their culture is a culture of productivity, the culture of living life. They created a whole city. They created one of the most prosperous places in the Middle East. And what do the Palestinians do? Nothing. They just suck up resources and create wars. That's the difference, and that's why you should be on the side of Israel, because Israel is the side of life, and we see it every day. And whatever topic you talk about, you see the difference between the two. Israel, successful, productive, love of life versus the death cult fueled by Islamism.
Um, Daniel, you say, there's no food in the desert, you move and all that. But, there's food in British prisons. That doesn't mean that, the fact that you have food in front of you doesn't mean you're not a victim of something, So yeah. Also, I like your policy proposal for money for drugs for Gazans. That sounds like the next project of the Chill Pill project. That is the next project of the International Association of Owen Jones Scholars. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. All super chats for the rest of the show will go to the Chill Pill project. Not really. It's not a real thing. Don't sue me for your money back afterwards. There's a comment here. By the way, one of the trolls in the chat, like half the chat is your comments, and you're complaining about being censored. That is consistent with your views. But another troll said something about, I can't find it now. Oh yeah. Maybe Trump will redevelop Gaza for the Palestinians. Qatar needs to pay him more money to do it. I mean, look, Trump, has said he will accept a Qatari plane. He, his administration is full of Qatari agents, like actual people who are registered Qatari agents. Actual people who got paid by Qatar to lobby for Qatar. or got paid by Qatar like to bail them out of bad business deals. That is the Trump administration, including Witkoff. And if Qatar and Trump, remember, Trump has promised that he will protect Qatar in the future, like militarily. Now, who is he going to protect Qatar from? Yeah, Muslims like killing other Muslims, but mostly they like killing Jews, and sometimes the Jews fight back. And so you have to wonder, especially with Qatar very much pushing to have a military presence essentially in Israel, because that is what them being a part of the peacekeeping force or international security force, whatever it's called in Gaza, that's what it means. And some of these forces will die. Whether it's unlikely, but in skirmishes with Palestinians who, let me remind you, kill each other all the time when they're not fighting against the Jews, and sometimes when they are, or in cases where the IDF actually has to do the job of defending Israelis from Gazans, and the Qatari allies of Hamas are in the way, or are used as human shields, or what have you. So yeah, it's interesting to see that comment coming from one of the more vile anti-Semitic trolls in the chat. But the fact is, this is a concern. I mean, it should be a concern for Israel. It's actually surprising how, relatively not bad Trump has been on Israel compared to certainly his predecessor, and compared to what could have been, considering that he is bought and paid for by Qatar, and so many of his people are. Richard.
Yeah, I mean, we are funding our own destruction in so many ways, via the UN, via international aid, via even the fact that, that public universities such as SOAS put up Francesca Albanese and give her a platform on which to speak. That is, again, essentially funded by the taxpayer of the UK, ultimately. So all of this is examples of the fact that we are complicit in our own destruction, because we are compromising. Good is compromising with evil at every stage, and pretending that it is not, pretending that it is good in the process. I mean, Francesca Albanese told the crowd that she spoke to that states must cut ties with Israel. That is her message wherever she goes, is to ensure that Israel is defunded at every opportunity. Basically, she wants Israel to cease to be able to exist. That is her project, the special rapporteur project that she's really engaged in. And I think it's quite clear that she never calls out the other side for anything at all. And certainly the idea that Hamas should, disarm, that the Palestinians should be culpable for their own actions in starting a war, certainly never enters into it. But it is time for the Palestinians to clear up their own mess. It's time for them to clear their own rubble. It's time for them to cease causing rubble in the first place, pulling down that rubble upon their own head by their own actions.
It's also time you stop mentioning that stupid woman, because
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sickened by it. You were talking about Qatar earlier on. Yeah, it's true. I mean, the problem mainly is that Israel itself is not actually protecting its own citizens from the intervention of the Qataris. I mean, for example, when they hit Doha, when they hit the Hamas leadership in Doha, the strike failed. They failed. They got away with it because apparently within the Israeli government itself, the security and intelligence establishment was against the thing. They were against hitting the Hamas leadership, and therefore they kind of boycotted their participation, and the strike failed. They could have taken out the Hamas leadership, but because as usual, altruism and the infinite series of compromises and appeasements that we seem to do in the West it takes precedence to actually defend yourself properly. We see this kind of bodged interventions. We see a continuous series of compromises that cause other issues, which there will be solved with compromises, which would then open another 15 can of worms. And that's how we seem to deal with international issues since the 50s, since after the Second War, really. The last time that actually the West fought in order to win a war.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Richard, basically she is an anti-Semite. Yeah, basically. I mean, she is next level. We don't even talk about all the crap she says. We did talk a little bit about we did a show about her and what's his face? Tucker Carlson. I sometimes block bad memories from my memory, but yeah, and I don't think we went that far into her part in it, but yeah, she comes up with stuff. A couple of days ago, I was walking somewhere in London, and I'm on the phone with Daniel. Daniel, I was on the phone with you, right? Where I paused for a second, and I'm like, "Holy shit! I just saw somebody who looks exactly like Francesca Albanese, but a bit younger and like with a baby." And and now I'm thinking if she is actually in town, maybe it was her, and that was some sort of
That wouldn't be necessarily out of place to have a baby, so so nothing
as a human
happens.
shield, yeah.
Yeah.
And now I forget what else I was gonna say, but Daniel, it's your turn anyway.
Well, I mean, I would just only wrap up with the words of, let's say, one of the presidents of the time, and this is something Richard alluded to. Our enemies never stop thinking about new ways to hurt our people and our country, and neither do we.
Is that George W. Bush or is it Donald Rumsfeld? Okay. Um, yeah, all right. If, I don't want to promise that we're going to talk about Megyn Kelly tomorrow because we keep promising it. And the thing is, she has been adding to the content of that episode. So when it eventually happens, it might just be we might leave it for the weekend so that we don't have the reality show after and we can go for like 3 hours. There is so much to say about Megyn Kelly and also what she represents in the very, very bad direction that the American right is moving. I also think we might talk about Ben Shapiro at some point because while there's a lot to fix there. Uh, he is the main I think the leader of the pushback against the downfall of the Republican conservative movement. Richard, Marco, where can people find you?
Check out the Briefly Objective. The link is in the description below for lots of short form material that we put on there related to the war. Do check it out.
Daniel, where can people find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Damned Dan. It might be live streaming today. Oh, public service announcement. Starlink is kind of good. I'm just on it, so I might be doing a live stream to test how good it is for that.
Yeah, this episode is not sponsored by Starlink, but Elon, call me. We're still gonna criticize you all the time, but we can do it better with some of your money. So yeah, feel free to support ARC UK. Same goes for everybody. The Irreplaceable Spark conference is coming in exactly 10 months. So get your tickets as soon as you can. Early bird prices will not last forever. That is October 17th, 18th of 2026 in Austin, Texas at the Westin at the Domain. And yeah, I'm Rozzy Ginsburg on X. We will be back here tomorrow with Daily Objective and the reality show. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining, for watching, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye.